Hi, I'm Amy and this video is part of my Reknit Revolution project. I'm going to show you how to cut open a piece of knitting vertically or diagonally. This is the first step in the Cardiganise reknit process as shown here, but it could also be useful for what I call insert panel, if you were doing that kind of vertically, inserting a panel within a piece of fabric, and the treatment I call reinvent, where you might take a piece of knitting from one garment and kind of repurpose it within a completely different garment. And although I'm calling the treatment Cardiganise, you could use it to add a trim to any cut edge, like for example a new neckline. You could use this process to add a new trim to that. If you want to make a jumper into a cardigan, you'll need to cut your knitting vertically. So if you stitch a marker thread to follow, that's a good way of making sure you don't go all over the place. So I've done it here on my little sample bit of fabric. In principle, it's quite straightforward to kind of identify where you're going to cut and then follow the vertical line of the fabric. If you are opening a garment, just make sure that you measure across it as well as don't just trust the vertical structure of the knit, because occasionally things have a bit of a kind of twist to them that you could end up with your opening just slightly at an angle, so you might have to adapt slightly. Okay, so here's my marker thread and I'm going to cut, and the purpose of this video is basically to show you what happens if you cut a piece of knitted fabric open. So I'm going to start off allowing my thread to show me where to cut, but then I'll remove it, take it out of the way. So there I go. I'm going to pull that out because now I can see and just follow the structure of the knit. There we are, two halves of that piece of knitting. So people tend to think that cutting like this, the fabric will just instantly disintegrate, but actually that tends not to be the case. As you can see here, it's not falling apart in my hands. And if you think about the structure, that makes sense. You've got these, each row has a yarn going up and down, up and down. Obviously there'll be a tendency for this very edge stitch to undo, but it can't go too far to the left because you've got the columns of stitches kind of holding each other safe. So I find that if I work carefully, it actually stays pretty intact until I get it finished off. For example, enclosed in a little sandwich trim that I'm going to show in another video. But if you're worried, you can secure it to protect the edge while you work on it. And you definitely need to do that if you were doing a diagonal cut or one that had a kind of curve to it. For example, if you're cutting out a new neckline or something, because of how the knitted structure works. So if I just do a cut on here to show you that. Okay, I'm just going to go a bit freeform here. Finish off. So there's a bit that could be, this could be a neckline or something. You've got, this will start to get frilly and sort of disintegrate. All of these stitches have the capacity to run and sort of ladder down. Won't necessarily go straight away, but structurally there's a lot more danger there. So if you're doing anything diagonal rather than exactly vertical, then I would definitely recommend that you do something to secure that edge until you can finish it by enclosing it or whatever. So in terms of securing it, there's various ways that you can do that. The most commonly suggested method is to machine stitch the fabric using a small straight stitch. You could alternatively zigzag stitch it or overlock it even. You could hand stitch it, or you could, especially if you were working on a vertical cut edge, there it is, you could crochet through the fabric. And I would actually suggest that you do those methods of securing before you cut. So on your straight panel, you would do your 2 rows of stitching of whatever type and then cut up between the stitching, and that would be the best way to do it. Okay, so here I've just shown you how to cut a knitted fabric vertically or diagonally, and hopefully I've given you some confidence that it's not as terrifying as it might possibly seem. The next 2 videos will show you how to pick up stitches along this edge and then add the trim to finish the raw edge.